Welcome to Stories of History. I am your host, Virgil. Today, we're diving deep into ancient Egypt to uncover the story of Hatshepsut, a woman who ruled as pharaoh for over 2 decades longer than any other female pharaoh in history. But here's the twist. After her death, someone went to great lengths to erase her from history. Her statues were defaced, her name chiseled off monuments, her accomplishments attributed to others. It's like she was meant to vanish from memory. So why? What made her reign so threatening that it had to be completely wiped from the historical record? To understand this mystery, we need to go back to Hatshepsut's beginnings. She wasn't just some randomer who snatched the throne. She was born into royalty, the daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I, and his great royal wife, Ahmose. Now that title, Great Royal Wife, wasn't just about being married to the pharaoh. He carried immense power and influence, often linked to the divine right to rule. So Hatshepsut was already in a position of privilege and authority. Following tradition, she married her half-brother Thutmose II. Further solidifying the royal lineage, they had a daughter, Neferer. But when Thutmose II died, their son, Thutmose III, from a secondary wife, was still too young to rule. So Hatshepsut stepped in as regent, kind of like a placeholder pharaoh until her stepson came of age. Makes sense, right? But here's where things get really interesting. Hatshepsut didn't just step aside when Thutmose III got older. Instead, she took a bold step, declaring herself pharaoh, ruling alongside him. Now imagine the audacity of this move. In a society where men held absolute power, a woman was claiming the highest position in the land. To solidify her claim, and maybe even to command respect, in this male-dominated world, Hatshepsut took an even more drastic step. She started portraying herself in a masculine way. Statues and paintings depict her wearing the pharaoh's traditional false beard and the full regalia of kingship, like she was saying, "I am pharaoh, hear me roar." It was a powerful statement, visually connecting herself to the long line of male pharaohs who came before her. But Hatshepsut wasn't just about appearances. She proved herself to be a capable and ambitious ruler. Unlike her father, who was all about military conquests, she focused on economic prosperity and those grand show-stopping building projects that the Egyptians were famous for. One of the standout moments of her reign was a massive trading expedition to the Land of Punt, a mysterious and exotic land thought to be somewhere along the Red Sea coast. Now, this wasn't just some casual shopping trip. Punt was legendary for its riches: gold, ivory, fragrant resins like myrrh, and all sorts of exotic animals. Imagine the scene when those ships returned to Thebes, laden with treasures and even giraffes. This expedition really put Hatshepsut's Egypt on the map, showing off their wealth and influence. And then there were the building projects. Hatshepsut was a prolific builder, leaving her mark all over Egypt. She commissioned impressive monuments, including the Red Chapel at Karnak. Those massive obelisks, think towering four-sided pillars covered in hieroglyphics. And her masterpiece, the Temple of Der el-Bahari, which translates to the Sublime of Sublimes. This temple, carved directly into a cliff face, with terraces and colonnades, wasn't just a display of architectural prowess. It was a statement of Hatshepsut's power and her connection to the divine. But as Hatshepsut was building her legacy, her stepson, Thutmose III, was growing up and gaining military experience, becoming a popular figure in his own right. The power dynamic between them was shifting. And this, my friends, is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Hatshepsut's reign was a time of peace and prosperity. But after her death, something strange happened. Her memory was systematically erased, her statues defaced, and her name literally chiseled off monuments. It's almost as if someone wanted to pretend she never existed. The question is who and why. The answer, like most things in history, isn't simple. But the most likely culprit is Thutmose III, her stepson, the one she shared power with as he matured and gained military clout. His influence grew, and maybe he saw Hatshepsut's reign as a threat to his own legacy, a female pharaoh overshadowing his achievements. But it wasn't just a matter of a power-hungry stepson. Remember, ancient Egypt was a deeply patriarchal society. The idea of woman ruling as pharaoh, claiming the divine right, wearing the traditional male symbols of power. This would have been deeply unsettling to many in the elite. It challenged the very fabric of their society, the established order, the ingrained beliefs about gender roles and who should hold power. So the effort to erase Hatshepsut wasn't just a personal vendetta. It was likely driven by a desire to reinforce traditional power structures, to say, this happened, but let's pretend it didn't. Let's not let this set a precedent. It's a stark reminder that history is often written by the victors, and those in power get to decide whose stories are told and whose are silenced. But even the most determined efforts to erase someone from history can fail, and that's exactly what happened with Hatshepsut. Despite the attempts to wipe her from memory, she re-emerged centuries later, thanks to a combination of lucky breaks and some good old-fashioned detective work. It started in the 19th century with Jean-Francois Champollion, the brilliant mind who cracked the code of hieroglyphics using the Rosetta Stone. Remember that? The stone slab with the same inscription in 3 different scripts, kind of like an ancient Egyptian decoder ring. As Champollion was deciphering these ancient texts, he noticed some strange inconsistencies. He found inscriptions that clearly referred to a female pharaoh, but the images showed a male figure wearing the pharaoh's beard and all the royal gear. It was like finding a photo of a woman labeled with a man's name. Something wasn't adding up. Intrigued, Champollion dug deeper, comparing texts, analyzing artwork, putting the pieces together, and he realized he had stumbled upon a lost pharaoh, a woman deliberately erased from history. Hatshepsut. It's like she was whispering from the past, "Don't forget me." At first, the picture of Hatshepsut that emerged was based on limited evidence, and she was often portrayed as an ambitious, maybe even cruel usurper, a woman who had illegitimately grabbed power. But as more evidence came to light, as archaeologists unearthed more inscriptions and artifacts from her reign, a different picture began to form. Scholars started reevaluating her, recognizing her not as a power-hungry villain, but as a highly successful ruler, a shrewd diplomat, a savvy businesswoman, and a builder who left a lasting mark on ancient Egypt. One of the most exciting discoveries came in 1903 when the famous archaeologist Howard Carter, the one who later found King Tut's tomb. Well, he found Hatshepsut's sarcophagus. That's the fancy stone coffin where pharaohs were buried. But there was a catch. It was empty. No mummy, no remains of the great queen. It was a tantalizing clue, a mystery begging to be solved. Where is Hatshepsut's body? For decades, the mystery remained. Then in 2005, a team of researchers led by Dr. Zahi Hawass, a big name in Egyptian archaeology, were re-examining a mummy that had been found back in 1903 in a tomb labeled KV60. This mummy, just called KV60A, had been labeled as belonging to a royal nurse and was basically forgotten in the basement of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. But Dr. Hawass and his team had a hunch they used modern forensic techniques to compare the mummy's features to known images of Hatshepsut's, and they found some striking similarities. Then came the breakthrough. They found a loose tooth that had been stored in a wooden box with Hatshepsut's name on it, and guess what? It perfectly matched a missing socket in the mummy's jaw. Talk about a historical eureka moment. The identification was confirmed. The mummy KV60A was Hatshepsut, the lost female pharaoh, brought back into the light after centuries of obscurity. It was a huge discovery, almost as big as finding King Tut's tomb. Hatshepsut's story is more than just a tale of ancient Egypt. It's a story about power, ambition, and the ways history can be manipulated and rewritten. But it's also a story of resilience, a testament to the enduring power of truth. Even when someone tries to erase you, the truth has a way of finding its way back to the surface. Hatshepsut's story raises some really big questions about how history gets written, who gets to decide what stories are told, and who gets silenced. Makes you think, doesn't it? So we know someone tried to erase Hatshepsut, most likely Thutmose III, but why go to such lengths? Was it purely a power grab? A jealous stepson wanting all the glory for himself? Well, maybe, but it's probably more complicated than that. Think about it. Hatshepsut was a woman ruling in a man's world. She challenged the traditional power structures, and that wouldn't have sat well with everyone, especially the elite who benefited from those structures. Imagine the whispers in the palace, the raised eyebrows, the challenges she must have faced from those who believed a woman had no place on the throne. Her erasure might have been an attempt to reinforce those traditional beliefs, to send a message that a female pharaoh was an anomaly, a mistake that shouldn't be repeated. It's a reminder that sometimes history isn't just about what happened, it's about what people want us to believe happened. But Hatshepsut's story didn't stay buried. Her monuments, her inscriptions, her very mummy, they all survived waiting to be rediscovered. And to challenge our assumptions about the past, it's like she was saying, you can try to erase me, but the truth will always find a way. Today, Hatshepsut is recognized as one of Egypt's most successful pharaohs. She was a powerful ruler, a shrewd politician, and a visionary builder. But more importantly, she was a woman who dared to break the mold, to challenge the conventions of her time and to rule in her own right. Her legacy is a testament to her strength, her intelligence, and her ability to overcome the limitations imposed on her by a patriarchal society. It's a story that resonates even today, reminding us that women have always held power, made history, and shaped the world. Hatshepsut's story also reminds us that history is never truly set in stone. It's constantly being re-examined, reinterpreted, and rewritten as new evidence emerges and new voices are heard. It encourages us to question what we think we know, to look deeper, and to search for the hidden stories waiting to be told. So the next time you hear a story about a powerful woman who was overlooked, dismissed, or erased from history, remember Hatshepsut. Remember that her story is not unique. and there are countless others waiting to be rediscovered and celebrated. Until the next story on Stories of History, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those minds engaged.